U.S. soldiers. Corporal Ainsworth Dyer, Sergeant Mark Leger, Private Richard Green, and Private Nathan Smith died when an American fighter pilot dropped a bomb on them in Afghanistan. They are the first non-Americans to be added to the wall. Hundreds of Uzbeks are seeking asylum in neighboring Kyrgyzstan, trying to leave behind what they call a massacre. But Kyrgyzstan says they're not refugees, so they're being sent back. Meanwhile, officials in Uzbekistan deny their soldiers fired on civilians in Andijan on May 13th. They blame Muslim militants for the unrest. The CBC's Nick Spicer is one of a few television journalists in the region. He asked some of those who fled Uzbekistan to share their stories. We should warn you, some of the images you'll see tonight are graphic.
Their stories are written on their faces. This woman just discovered her son was killed as the people fled the soldiers' bullets. We were holding hands and running, she says. Then I lost his hand and I lost him in the crowd. The Uzbek government says only 169 people died in the incident, including some soldiers. It says armed Muslim extremists started the violence. These people tell a different story. They recall a government trap. We heard President Karimov was going to come to talk to the people, she says. We came to tell him how badly people were living in the country. He never came. But soldiers did. The government was worried by weeks of protests over the imprisonment of local businessmen it accused of religious extremism. The night before the massacre, a crowd freed them, including Atamatov Shamsuddin, a baker who was in the square the day of the killings. The snipers opened fire first on the demonstrators who spoke on a microphone, he says. They were shot in the head or chest. Then, armored personnel carriers opened fire. This refugee is one of several getting one of those bullet wounds treated at a hospital near the refugee camp. They remember the air thick with screams, the road covered with blood and bodies, and how they tried to shield the most vulnerable. The elders told us men to surround the women and children to protect them, he says. That's when we started to walk. They walked through the night. They walked 50 kilometers to the border, carrying their wounded. The survivors then walked here, in sight of the hills of their homeland. They want refugee status and a home someplace else, Germany, Japan, Canada, anywhere but Uzbekistan. As they wait, human rights groups take their testimony.
What happened is obviously was mass-scale shooting of civilians from close range by military.
The question for Western countries now is what to do about the Andijan massacre, a question especially for the United States. In the name of the war against terrorism, it helped train Karimov's army. Nick Spicer, CBC News at the Suzak refugee camp, Kyrgyzstan.
Here are some of the other stories we're following tonight.